On the day we were supposed to get engaged, my girlfriend, Fiona, made me go through the whole ceremony by myself. Meanwhile, I saw online that she was confessing her love to her crush in public. After her crush, Julian, came back to the country, he immediately became my boss. He took my spot in a special industry program for jewelry designers, and he even won the jewelry design competition that I should have won. I confronted Fiona, and she said, "Don't make a big deal out of it. How can you even compare yourself to him?" So I ran away from the wedding, changed jobs to a rival company, and became a jewelry star in the industry. Fiona, however, was holding a huge diamond ring, crying and begging me to come back and marry her. I put my arm around another woman, showed off my company shares, and said, "Stop joking. How can you even compare yourself to her?" 1 hour before the engagement party, I sat in front of the mirror. My phone was on the message screen from Julian. It was a picture and a few texts. He was wearing a dark blue suit, his arm around Fiona's waist, and they looked like a perfect couple. "I heard you're getting engaged today. Maybe if you beg me a little, I might be nice and let her go." I stared at the cuff of his sleeve, the green diamond set in the dark blue cufflink, the same one I had given to my girlfriend as a gift for our 6-year anniversary. Just then, the makeup artist, who had been on the phone, came over and apologized. "Sorry, the front desk said Miss Fiona already picked up her suit yesterday." I listened without reacting. Then my phone buzzed again. It was another message from Julian. "By the way, she also said that this suit looks better on me than on you." I started dialing Fiona's number. After dozens of unanswered calls, I slammed my phone onto the table and took a deep breath. The makeup artist carefully asked, "So, what should we do next?" "Let me borrow your phone for a moment," I replied coldly. In less than 10 seconds, the call went through. I didn't bother to scold her and went straight to the point. "Where are you?" In her usual casual tone, she replied, "Didn't I tell you? I'm on a business trip. You'll be fine without me." I couldn't believe it. "You're making me go through the engagement alone." She avoided the question. "It's a special situation. I'll bring you a gift when I get back." I could faintly hear a man's voice in the background, and Fiona quickly hung up. My throat tightened, and my heart slowly filled with disappointment. In the end, I walked through the engagement ceremony alone, facing the confused and mocking looks of relatives and guests. Some people are so sad. Unbelievable. Who's he putting on this show for? Amidst all the gossip, my phone buzzed twice. "Here's your engagement gift, Tilda." I was walking down the aisle when the big screen behind me started showing a live broadcast. I turned, following the crowd's gasp, and saw the woman who should have been at the engagement party. Instead, she was standing on a street in another country, holding a bunch of bright purple flowers. The video title read, "Real life imitates fiction. Rich girl proposes on the streets." She slowly walked towards the man across from her, knelt on one knee, and offered him the flowers as if presenting her love. The live comments rolled in like crazy. "Wishing them happiness, forever, and a baby soon, tilde, tilde, tilde. Ah, so in love, what a perfect match. One person's promise, please get married already." I silently watched this whole thing, feeling like I was the outsider in the story. Fiona came back, bringing her man with her, and booked a place for 3 days. I found out about the private event from my credit card history. Fiona didn't invite me, and her circle of rich friends wasn't exactly welcoming. Every time I see that guy, looking all eager and desperate, it makes me sick. He's just a nobody, taking advantage of the fact that he looks like Julian. Yeah, hasn't Fiona had enough of him? She's even engaged to him now. I stopped walking at the door. At that moment, a clear male voice said, "So are you planning to marry him?" The room fell silent for a moment, and I heard that familiar, lazy voice. I'm just playing with him." The man pretended to be hurt, saying, "When I left, you told me you'd wait for me, and now you've already fallen for someone else." She casually comforted him. I never loved him. I pushed the door open with a bang, and the noisy scene immediately went quiet. So quiet you could hear a pin drop. The smile that had been on Fiona's face suddenly flickered with panic. I forced a stiff smile, my tone full of sarcasm. "Sorry to interrupt?" Someone tried to smooth things over. "What interruption? You're here already. Come on in and sit down." I ignored them, walking straight to Fiona and cutting to the chase. "You ditched my engagement party just to send him flowers?" Fiona glanced up at me, impatiently saying, "Stop causing trouble. I have things to do today. Just go back." I stood my ground, pushing further. "If we don't clear this up today, no one is leaving this room." Seeing the tension between us, Julian stepped in. "Mark," he said, "you're misunderstanding. We're just friends. What happened yesterday was purely a friendly gesture. Fiona is a great person. You should trust her." I didn't even glance at her, continuing to demand from Fiona. "You're giving flowers to a friend, and you're on one knee." Fiona interrupted irritably. "Can you stop believing all that nonsense online? Look at you now, you're just like a jealous person. Am I the one thinking wrong? Or is it your thoughts that are twisted? You know in your heart." I was already furious when Julian suddenly handed me a glass of water, his voice trying to calm me down. "Mark, don't be angry. Really, nothing happened. Here, have some water to cool down." I accidentally knocked over the glass, and the boiling hot water splashed out, burning Julian's arm. I hissed, feeling it burn my own hand as well. Fiona quickly grabbed Julian's arm, her eyes filling with concern, and the sight of it stabbed at me. When she looked up at me again, her eyes were cold, signaling she was getting angry. "Mark, apologize." I clutched my burned hand, my body shaking with rage, the words stuck in my throat. I couldn't speak. The rich friend started backing her up. "Mark, enough. There's a limit to how much you can be jealous." I took a deep breath, clenched my fists, and said sorry. Then, I punched Julian squarely in the face. Julian's eyes went blank, as if still stunned, and his face was knocked sideways. I raised my scalded hand and said, "You burned me." I didn't look at Fiona's expression, just focused on the swollen half of Julian's face, and smirked. "Sorry, didn't control my strength. Consider it interest. Take the woman if you want her." With that, I looked over at Julian's angry glare and Fiona's pale face, and walked out without looking back. I was born in a small mountain village in the south. Growing up, I herded cows and planted corn, never having seen the outside world. It wasn't until I ranked first in the city's high school entrance exam that an uncle, with the last name Harrison, came to my house. I followed him to the city and became a sponsored student in the Harrison family. At the Harrison house, I met Fiona. She had just become a young woman, elegant, graceful, and beautiful, capturing my youth. In the very beginning, I was just Fiona's little follower. During PE class, she played volleyball while I passed her water and towels. When she had her first crush, I covered for her for 3 years. She skipped class to go to a concert and left all her homework for me. Her friends called me the top follower, often teasing me. I didn't mind. Being good to her felt like a fair exchange, not related to my pride. I didn't truly fall in love with her until a summer night 12 years ago. It was Fiona's birthday party, and those rich friends tricked me into thinking Fiona had gotten drunk and wanted to see me. It was past 11 p.m., and I couldn't get a taxi, so I ran for over 6 miles. By the time I arrived, someone tried to scare me, saying Fiona had fallen into the pool. I was in a daze, not thinking at all, and dove straight in. After struggling for a while, my arms and legs grew weak. In the end, it was Fiona who had come up for air, who pulled me out. She gave the person who started it a good beating and declared, Mark is my brother. Anyone who dares to bully him will have to answer to me first." After that incident, I began to cherish every moment spent with Fiona and dreamed about forever. The night before college entrance exam applications, the sky was full of stars, the grass was lush, and the birds were singing. She leaned in close to my ear and whispered, "Do you know what my dream university is?" "B University," I blurted out. It was her wish for 3 years written on her bookmark. "But now I think," she said, "a university, where you are, is also pretty great." A university was in the capital city, and it was my first choice. That sentence became the most beautiful confession I kept close to my heart. Later, we both enrolled at a university. I chose jewelry design as my major because the Harrison family was a famous jewelry family, and independent jewelry designers were always in high demand. From the moment I started, I worked hard to improve my drawing skills and participated in various jewelry design competitions. I placed my trophies and certificates in Fiona's room, excitedly promising her, "Wait and see, I'm going to design a bunch of bestsellers for the Harrison family and support you for life." Fiona just smiled and gently kissed me. That kiss was mint-flavored, blooming in late spring and early summer. Before summer arrived, I designed my first real piece, 2 rose-tail rings. I planned to wait for the rings to arrive and present them to Fiona as a token of my love. But instead, I saw Fiona and Julian together, kissing in front of the display case filled with my trophies, not caring about anyone around them. Julian, a young master from a rich family, wore high-end luxury brands and had an air of elegance and wealth with every gesture. As for me, I was called a copy because of my similar eyes. But he was the one who had come later. On the day Julian left to study abroad, Fiona screamed, "I'll wait for you!" I stayed with her at the airport all night, holding her, kissing her. I told myself it was okay. I could wait. I could wait until she forgot about him. I moved out of the apartment. The last message I received before Fiona's number was blocked was, "Wait for it. I'll make you beg me to get back together." The next day when I saw Julian at the office, I finally understood what she meant. "This is the new director, Julian, just returned from abroad. Let's give him a warm welcome." The meeting room fell silent, and everyone looked at my expression. Everyone knew that I was competing for the design department director position this week, and for the past half year, I had already become the team's leader. I suppressed the urge to laugh bitterly, then said calmly, "Welcome." Everyone sighed in relief and started clapping. Julian smiled, acting as if he hadn't noticed anything. "Thank you, everyone. I have to attend a meeting. Could you please help me tidy up my office?" He looked directly at me, his eyes flashing with a pleading light. If I didn't know his true nature, I might have thought he was simply asking a regular colleague for help. I finally couldn't help but let out a mocking laugh. John, my assistant, quickly stepped forward. "I'll do it. Mark's busy." Vice President Smith cleared his throat. "All right, let's wrap up the meeting." I didn't go after Fiona, but she had successfully pushed me to the center of attention. In the nth encounter at the cafeteria, the gossip was relentless. "What's going on? Did Mark and she break up?" "Did you hear? He got stood up at his engagement party." "Such a pity, but he brought it on himself. He had to aim too high." My phone buzzed with a new message. "Today's the deadline. Move back in. I'll give you everything you want. Be obedient." I looked up and met Fiona's eyes, who had just put her phone down. I was the first to look away, saying to John, "I have something to do. You can eat alone today." With that, I left John, who stood there stunned, and turned briskly. "What's wrong?" Julian noticed Fiona's distracted look and asked. Fiona gritted her teeth, her brow furrowing in anger. "I've agreed to what you suggested yesterday." Fiona and I were now in a full-blown Cold War. Meanwhile, My latest design draft was rejected by Julian for the 6th time. "What's going on with you? The rose element we agreed to add, what is this?" "The rose doesn't fit the theme for this issue." "Who's the director here, exactly?" Julian tilted his chin slightly, arrogance radiating from his eyes. He slammed the design paper into my chest. "If you don't fix it, I'll report you for slacking off." I took a deep breath, suppressing the anger swelling in my chest, and silently turned around. "Fiona, Mark doesn't seem to be doing well lately. You should talk to him. If he keeps this up, he'll drag down the whole design department." The sweet, syrupy voice drifted through the crack in the door. The colleagues passing by immediately hid their gossiping stares. I lifted my head abruptly, stormed back to my office, and slammed the draft onto the desk. John hurriedly handed me a glass of water, trying to calm me down. "Bro, relax. It's not worth it." I drank a few sips of water, exhaled, and my racing heart began to slow down. "Thanks," I said, my mood easing a bit. "Did the approval come through?" ASD was a famous French jewelry company that entered the Chinese market last year, and they had established an annual exchange program with the Harrison family. The project leader from ASD was Alex, and I was his biggest fan. John hesitated, clearly uneasy, as he fumbled to answer. My heart sank as I opened the application page. The word "rejected" stared back at me. I called Vice President Smith, and he was surprised. "Wasn't the spot internally recommended to you?" "What?" I was momentarily caught off guard. "This morning, Mr. Harrison mentioned in the meeting that the spot was internally recommended." I abruptly hung up the phone and rushed to the general manager's office. How could I have forgotten? She was the one who had personally given me that spot. Only she knew how long I had been waiting for this opportunity. She was always good at these little tricks, vengeful and aloof. I forcefully pushed open the door to the GM's office and saw 2 people standing close to each other. Fiona pushed Julian away, her movements flustered. Julian pretended to be nervous and adjusted his clothes and said, "He just arrived. You should talk to him properly. I'll leave now." With that, he brushed past me, suddenly stopping to smile provocatively. "See you at dinner." He flashed a triumphant grin at Fiona. Fiona nodded at him and then turned to frown at me, complaining, "Why didn't you knock before coming in?" I sneered. "What, did I ruin your little plan?" "Can you stop with the conspiracy theories? Julian and I are completely innocent." "Fine. Then tell me, why did you give him the internally recommended spot?" Fiona didn't ask how I knew about it, only replied, "I heard you've been a bit off lately. So the spot that was supposed to be mine, you gave it to him instead." Fiona frowned. "The company's spot doesn't lose out no matter who gets it. Can you stop being so petty?" "Do you know how many extra hours I worked and how many projects I took on for this spot?" I retorted angrily, my voice tinged with frustration. Fiona remained unmoved, calmly replying, "I know, but you don't. You don't know. After all the work, none of it matters if you don't lower your head and apologize to me." I clenched my fists, crumpling the edges of my clothes. "Fiona, I just want to tell you, I've never treated you unfairly. Only by taking back what I gave you will you realize how much you've actually received. Come back, and I'll pretend nothing ever happened." I took 3 steps back, my voice firm. "Fiona, everything I've received up to now is something I fought for with my own effort. When I was with you, I wasn't after any of this. I'm telling you now. This company with him, not me." Fiona gave a cold, mocking smile. "Julian has a higher degree, greater ability, and he's more obedient and thoughtful than you. How dare you compare yourself to him?" The last sentence felt like a dagger to my heart. Fiona sighed. "But don't worry, I won't abandon you. After all, we've been together for 6 years. "Yes, 6 years. It wasn't a waste to see a woman's true nature after 6 years. The sharp pain in my chest spread throughout my body. I numbly nodded and said, "Fine, I'll resign." I arrived at the bar and drowned myself in alcohol until I was completely drunk. "Is anyone sitting here?" A soft, sweet voice interrupted my thoughts, accompanied by the faint scent of her perfume drifting through the air. I squinted, only to see an unexpected person. It was Miss Sarah, the second daughter of the Yates family, Harrison's arch rivals. I had some impression of her. Last year, the two families launched new products in Los Angeles. My new product was a huge success, overwhelmingly stealing the spotlight. Miss Yates wasn't happy about it, and directly came to find me. That day, a model had an emergency, and I had to step in myself. Standing under the spotlight, a glass purple sunflower pendant sparkled at my collarbone. The compliments poured in incessantly, and soon some people started bidding right on the spot. I didn't reveal myself as the designer to avoid unnecessary attention and speculation. In the growing excitement, a figure stood in front of me. Her gaze shifted from my neck to my face. We locked eyes for several seconds, and I realized she wasn't looking at the jewelry, but at me. My cheeks flushed slightly, and I frowned awkwardly. She squinted and smiled, saying, "Blind to what's valuable when there's something much more precious here." Her words confused everyone around us. What happened next left everyone stunned. She pulled out a business card and handed it to me. "5 million annual salary, Yates doors are open to you." After that, rumors spread that the second daughter of the Yates family had shown interest in Harrison's exhibition model and offered a 5 million yuan sponsorship on the spot. Only I, facing her directly at the time, understood that she was openly attempting to steal Harrison's talent. Of course, I refused her. Afterwards, Sarah never revealed my identity, nor did she pursue the matter. I sighed in relief, and before Fiona came back, I swapped shifts with the model, so Fiona never suspected it was me. I hadn't expected to run into her here. I politely curved my lips. "Hello?" She seemed uninterested in keeping up the pleasantries and cut straight to the point. "I heard you didn't get the promotion." I scoffed. "Do you have to be so obvious?" She didn't respond. Instead, she leaned forward slightly and extended 2 fingers. "Whatever she offered, I'll offer twice that." I shook my head regretfully, just wanting the conversation to end. "Miss Yates, please leave." Sarah lazily twirled her drink and casually said, "Next month is the IGS National Jewelry Design Competition." I tilted my chin slightly, determined. "I'll win the championship with my skills." Sarah smiled faintly, leaning in to whisper, "Can you really?" Her question lingered like a ghost, echoing in my ears long after she spoke. I thought of the director position I had lost and the corporate exchange opportunity that was internally recommended. Harrison's was one of the sponsors for IGS. I grabbed my drink again and started drinking heavily. By the end of the night, I blacked out. The next morning, I woke up in a strange room. I opened the door and unexpectedly locked eyes with Sarah, who was standing outside. Her gaze darted away quickly, and her ears turned bright red. I was completely confused by this. Surely, we didn't sleep together, right? I looked down at my still intact clothes. The moment I did, Sarah's expression turned even more awkward. "No, nothing happened," she quickly tried to clarify, but her face had the unmistakable look of someone trying too hard to deny it. Something definitely happened. I could sense there was something off. I just played along with polite laughter. "Thanks for last night. I'll head out now." Sarah nodded vigorously, then seemed to remember something and said, I'll take you." I planned to go back to the office to pack my personal belongings, so Sarah took me to the building entrance. "Hey, Sarah called out to me, as if she wanted to say something but hesitated. "Watch out!" A sharp honk from an electric scooter suddenly broke through the air, and I pulled her back with all my strength. In that moment, memories flashed through my mind like a shooting star. I staggered towards her, the world spinning, and accidentally buried my face in her chest. When I came back to my senses, I froze, standing by the side of the busy street. "What are you two doing?" A shout snapped me back to reality. I let go of Sarah and turned to see the source of the voice, Fiona. "Mark, I've been calling you all night. Is this how you're spending your time with Sarah?" Fiona's hair was messy, her eyes dark with exhaustion. Her usual meticulous image was completely gone. A sudden, vindictive pleasure surged through me, but someone was one step ahead. Sarah lightly looped her arm through mine and smiled indifferently. "Do you have a problem with that?" Fiona looked at us, stunned, unable to form a coherent sentence. "No, but you two—" I leaned in towards Sarah, mocking. "What's wrong? Are men only allowed to be yours?" Then I casually draped my arm around Sarah's shoulders. "Let's go, breakfast." Perhaps provoked by Sarah's presence, Fiona stubbornly refused to sign my resignation form. I packed my things and took them home, then entered into a creative lockdown mode, focused on my design sketches. I decided to enter the IGS National Jewelry Design Competition as an individual and prove my worth. During this time, I only kept in touch with Sarah when she occasionally stopped by. Strangely enough, despite being rivals, Harrison's top designer and Yates' rival, I found that our design philosophies were shockingly similar. While sketching, we talked about art, music, and everything in between, effortlessly syncing. When my project was finally finished, the first person I thought of sharing it with was Sarah. In the summer sun, a woman in pure white sat on the ground, gazing down silently at the artwork. She looked like a painting, framed in a small room, so beautiful that I didn't dare to disturb her. The air was quiet, and her long sigh seemed to fill the space. "You've always wanted to know why I went to such lengths to get you into Yates, right?" she finally said. "Why?" I asked, intrigued. "The answer lies 6 years ago in the North Side studio of the A University Art Building." The air grew still for a few seconds before I suddenly exclaimed, "Ah, were you the one with the bowl cut?" In my junior year, I discovered an abandoned studio in the corner of the art building while rushing to prepare for a competition. I often stayed up all night there, but soon another person started showing up as well. After a month-long battle for space, we reached a ceasefire agreement. We'd split the studio in half. During that time, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the soft scratching of pencils on paper. Sarah continued, "That period was my low point. But in your eyes, I saw light. I actually knew you from freshman year. At the club's first meeting, you showed your still immature work and told everyone you wanted to become a jewelry designer. Later, you represented the school in a national design competition and told the judges the same thing. I couldn't help but imagine what it would be like to fight alongside you." She finished speaking, then looked at me with surprise, her voice softening. "What's wrong?" "Huh?" I belatedly realized my face was wet, and my heart trembled. I suddenly buried my face in my hands and broke down in tears. I felt a gentle hand on my head, and without thinking, leaned onto a slender yet strong shoulder. "Trust me, your skills are more than enough. As for everything else, let me help you, okay?" "Thank you," I whispered, barely able to speak. A month into the competition, I made it to the finals without any major incidents. The final event was held at the famous convention center in City A. The exhibition area was open and buzzing with people, a crowd of talented designers dressed in fine clothes. Each piece of work was framed and displayed for guests to admire. Even if a work didn't win, Simply being displayed here for a few moments was an honor for any designer. And the work that drew the most attention was, naturally, the one that stood out the most. I walked over, standing in front of one particular piece, stunned and speechless. Sarah approached me, softly reading the title aloud. Moonlight. "I thought your final work wasn't this one," she asked. My face turned ashen, and without thinking, I turned and ran, frantically searching through the hall. It wasn't until I saw that figure that I charged forward, grabbing a glass of red wine and hurling it directly at him. Ignoring the crowd that was beginning to gather, I shouted in fury, "You stole my design! How shameless!" The sketch I had left behind in my apartment. He hadn't changed a single line. Julian, looking bewildered and innocent, retorted, "What are you talking about?" "I really don't understand," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "Why do you always target me?" "Just because Fiona used to like me, you slander me like this?" I was beside myself with rage. I grabbed his wrist and started dragging him toward the door. "Stop pretending! You're coming with me to the arbitration committee." "I don't want to!" Julian suddenly started struggling violently. Fiona rushed over and shoved me away, shouting, "Mark, stop bullying Julian!" I pointed at her, my finger trembling with fury. "You're enabling him." Fiona was unfazed. "Can't you stop making a scene? How many times do I have to tell you? And how could Julian do something like that? Maybe you should reflect on yourself." My head was spinning, and in that moment the people before me seemed like strangers. The woman I had loved for over 10 years had repeatedly lowered my expectations in the past 2 months. A member of the competition committee approached and asked, "Is there a problem here?" Fiona quickly responded, "No, everything's fine." The committee member nodded. "Then the awards ceremony will proceed as scheduled at 7 p.m. I opened my mouth to speak, but Sarah, who had been standing behind me, gently placed a hand on my shoulder and shook her head. Fiona's expression darkened as she observed our interaction. "After the event, the usual place," she said coldly. Across from the venue was a university, and under the blue jacaranda tree at the entrance was where we used to meet so often. I couldn't help but glance out the window and saw the sprawling blue-violet color outside. "The flower language of the blue jacaranda is desperate love," Sarah whispered in my ear, like a spell cast by a prince. "Rather than obsessing over something that's not right for you, it's better to look around at what's near you." The host on stage announced, "The winner of this competition is Like Me and Moonlight." 2 voices rang out in my ears at the same time, with completely different content, like 2 thunderclaps. Sarah slowly raised her right hand, speaking clearly, "I'm reporting this." Ignoring the subtle gestures from the competition committee, Sarah continued, "Fiona bribed the judges. The winner of this competition is in doubt." The incident eventually made headlines, and the Harrison family's stock plummeted. I also submitted evidence to the arbitration committee proving Julian's plagiarism. This year's jewelry design competition was abruptly suspended, and the organizing committee faced a major overhaul. My phone was bombarded with media inquiries, and my private residence was exposed. In desperation, I had no choice but to retreat to my hometown and lay low. Unexpectedly, the next day, Fiona came looking for me. She looked disheveled, her face haggard, a clear reflection of the stress she had been under. "Fiona, I really didn't expect her to do this," I said. She looked up at me, her gaze deep and filled with emotion. "The company has fired him. Come back, please." If it had been the old me, I might have easily fallen for this. But now, I just sneered. "Go ahead. Tell me what you want me to do." Fiona gently took my hand. I didn't pull away, and she seemed to savor the moment. "Mark, Harrison family has supported you for so many years. Just consider it a way to repay them. Attend the press conference and clarify this situation. Fine, I agreed, without hesitation. Fiona's eyes brightened. Really? I said seriously. I'm not like you. When I say something, I follow through. Fiona was momentarily speechless, but didn't lash out. She forced a smile and nodded. All right, I'll arrange for a driver. After this is over, will you marry me? I paused for a moment, confused. What do you mean? Fiona, looking moved, responded. I saw the back of the moonlight design. I realized that it was the piece you made for our wedding. Only now did I realize how much you love me. From now on, I won't have any more dealings with Julian. I will love only you, now and forever. I curved my lips into a smile, but my eyes remained cold. Okay. I want a traditional Chinese wedding, a honeymoon in Bali, and to wear Alex's latest Starlight collection. Fiona embraced me intimately. No problem. I'll make all the arrangements. At the press conference, I picked through the statements, only saying a few polite words to return the favor. In the meantime, the buzz outside was all about my engagement with Fiona. On our wedding day, I wore a simple white outfit and knocked on the door of the Yates family's French estate. Confess your love and then disappear? Are you playing hard to get? Sarah smiled as she looked at me. I smiled back without a word, pulling out a document from my bag. Take me in for a few days. This is my payment. Sarah also took out a stack of documents. I can take you in for a lifetime. These are my payment. I flipped through the papers. My ID card, household registration book, bank cards, a stock transfer contract, and a rental agreement. I was speechless. Well, I must admit, I'm a greedy and lustful man. Sarah seemed to enjoy the moment. Good. I happen to have both wealth and beauty. Feel free to take what you want. Meanwhile, news of the Harrison family heiress running away from her wedding spread like wildfire across City A, even making it onto the trending news. I heard that Fiona waited at the wedding venue for an entire day and night, but the groom never returned. A month later, Sarah and I returned to the country, and I finally turned on my phone, which had been off for a while. Thousands of missed calls and messages flooded in, and I deleted them all without hesitation. I went to Yates Corporation to finalize my job entry, then returned to my apartment, where I was greeted with a passionate embrace. Fiona's hair was a mess, her body completely exposed. Just seeing this made my blood boil. With a strange burst of strength, she pushed me onto the couch and climbed on top of me. I struggled, shouting, "Fiona, are you crazy?" The woman before me was a wreck, her expression dazed, nothing like the sharp, successful CEO I once knew. "Mark, you're mine. You can only be mine," she mumbled as though in a trance, leaning in to kiss me wildly. I bit down hard, the metallic taste of blood spreading in my mouth. "Don't make me lose respect for you, Fiona." Her movements paused for a moment, and just then, a strong force shoved Fiona away. A blanket quickly covered her from head to toe. Sarah stood there, arms crossed, looking down at her with disdain. "I've never seen someone so shameless." Fiona, possibly aware of how humiliating she looked, covered her face and started sobbing. I walked over and squatted in front of her, silent for a long moment. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with hope. "Mark, don't you want me anymore?" I sighed and patted her face gently. "Do you get it now? This is how you treated me before." Fiona whispered, "I'm sorry, Mark." I forced a smile. "No need to apologize. I stopped caring a long time ago." Panic rose in Fiona's eyes. "It's not like that. Please, don't." I turned away, not looking at her. Late feelings are more worthless than grass. Sarah put her arm around me, pulling me closer. "Miss Harrison, if you keep hanging around my boyfriend's place, I'll call the police." Fiona shot Sarah an angry glance. But before she left, she said to me, "I don't mind, Mark. I'll wait for you, just like you waited for me. I know you did this on purpose. You wanted me to experience what it's like to be stood up." I've felt it now, but I'm honored to feel what you went through. Just treat me as your backup. I've always been here. Moonlight. I created it. It's the witness to our love. The Yates family's Spring of Thorns became a huge success and the top piece of the season. Meanwhile, Harrison family suffered from the bribery scandal, with sales plummeting, and their new designs failed to make it into the top 50. I officially joined Yates family as the design department director, earning the nickname Jewelry Tycoon. Before I knew it, this title was widely circulated in the industry. During an interview, Sarah suddenly leaned into the camera and said, "I have an announcement to make. We're getting married next month. Media friends, you're all welcome to attend." I was surprised, and she winked at me. The next day, the news of our wedding took over every headline. This time, unlike before, I was genuinely excited for the wedding. After a series of tedious preparations, I finally put on a suit and stood under the bright lights. But standing next to me were two women. Seeing Fiona, who had seemingly appeared out of nowhere, made my lips twitch in disbelief. The crowd buzzed with chatter. Sarah, however, was unfazed, casually standing there as if she were watching a show. "Mark, I only realized after losing you that I can't live without you. You learned design for me, and my room still has your trophies. As I reflect, I remember all the little things we shared. We raised pets together. You know my taste in vegetables, and you picked out my dresses. My future can't be without you." With that, she pulled out a diamond ring the size of a pigeon's egg, tears streaming down her face. "Mark, will you marry me?" I scoffed, pulling out my phone and showing her the stock page. She looked at it, and her smile froze. I put my arm around Sarah's waist and smirked. "Stop joking! How dare you compare yourself to her?" I didn't even glance at Fiona again, and together with Sarah, we walked toward the center of the stage. There was my bright future,